At my consulting coach, we found that the number one reason why over 80% of candidates fail MBB interviews is because they do not approach cases like consultants. The pattern is usually read a casebook, practice blindly, and hope for the best. The objective of this video is to teach you everything you need to know about solving cases like a consultant. We will show you how to approach them strategically so you can start practicing effectively and do it in the shortest time possible. First, we will introduce case studies and show you how to approach any case like a consultant. Then, we will dive into key business concepts that are essential for solving cases effectively, what we call building blocks. From there, we will cover how to prepare and finally interview day tips. It's Giovanni from my consulting coach. Let's get started. Let's look at how to approach case interviews with our problem driven approach. A case interview is a problem solving exercise where you're asked to tackle a business challenge similar to real consulting work. You will analyze information and recommend a solution for a client organization. Example questions include: what price would you pay for a banking license in Ghana? What's the value of the electric vehicle market in Germany? Or how much gas storage should a UK energy supplier build? They are usually based on an engagement your interviewer or the consultancy has worked on, and it's not an academic exercise. Consultants approach engagements using a variation of the McKinsey 7S approach, and the best part is you can adapt it to tackle any case. It's flexible and practical, giving you a structured way to think through problems just like the pros do. The McKinsey 7-step problem solving process includes define the problem, structure the problem, prioritize root causes, develop initial hypothesis, test key hypotheses, conversion solutions, and outline an execution plan. However, this is often an overkill for case studies. That's why at my consulting coach we have streamlined the process. The first step is identify the problem, equivalent to McKinsey's define the problem, frame the solution, which corresponds to structure the problem, lead the analysis, which combines prioritize root causes, develop and test hypotheses, and synthesize solutions, and finally provides recommendations, which aligns with McKinsey's outline execution plan. This approach, which we call the problem driven structure, keeps things efficient while still capturing the essence of how consultants solve problems in real life. This is different from standard frameworks like profitability, M&A, etc., because it's broad enough to apply to any situation while still guiding you towards a solution. Business concepts need to be decoupled from the problem solving framework to allow for creative solutions. Standard case interview frameworks mix these. Now, let's look at the approach in action. A case prompt is: the CEO of a large retail warehouse is considering investing in a new software solution to optimize operations. The main problem is determining if this investment is a wise decision for the business. Let's start with identify the problem. There are two main objectives. Understand the business. You need to grasp how the business operates, its value chain, and how it makes money. In this case, you need to understand how the warehouse works and also the context in which the business operates, like market trends or external challenges. And secondly, you need to clarify the objective. Here, you need to define the single key success criteria for the client. You can achieve these objectives in four simple steps. Listen to the prompt carefully and jot down key points. Engage with your interviewer to dig deeper. Asking focused questions about the business. Formulate a hypothesis based on the details you have gathered so far. And finally, checking your hypothesis to make sure it matches both the problem and the business context. First, let's look at taking notes. You should keep one scrap paper for notes where you jot down whatever you need, and another one where you keep your key info and structure. It's up to you how you want to structure your scrap paper. The one with key info and structure should be divided into two: left for structure and right for key points. For a case like this, where the prompt is vague, we will need to ask a few questions before being able to formulate a hypothesis. We can bucket our questions, for instance, in three main areas: geography, business model, and company objectives. Being able to structure questions at the beginning of the case takes a little practice. Going through our building blocks, more on this later, and practicing cases helps. An interviewee would inquire about these three areas. Over the conversation, they will be able to understand that in terms of geography, the warehouse operates in Texas and neighboring states. Their business model is based on storage, which is their main focus. and their workflow is receiving goods, storing them, and shipping them to different locations. The revenue comes from storage, handling, and packing, and they have issues with keeping up with current demand. The key company objectives are improving efficiency and reducing costs. Furthermore, the interviewee should inquire about the key KPI, which would move the needle. And in this case, the interviewer would reply and say that the key KPI they're looking for is the payback period. The candidate should also check with the interviewer if their hypothesis is correct. The next step in solving this case is structuring the problem, or as we call it at my consulting coach, framing the solution. The key to solving any complex problem is to break it down into smaller, simpler subproblems. This creates an easy to follow roadmap that guides you step by step to the solution. This is what we call the structure. Building a solid structure is crucial. It sets the foundations for the entire case. A good structure logically connects sub-items, often using an issue tree, where blocks are linked like in this example. There are other types of structure too, which we cover in our course. A good structure fulfills the following requirements: messiness, level consistency, materiality, simplicity, and actionability. We go through these again in detail in our course. But how do we know how to break a problem down? And how do we identify the key drivers that affect the business? This is where a little business knowledge comes in handy. Many business problems follow similar patterns, so there is no need to reinvent the wheel each time. You can draw inspirations from well known concepts. For instance, cost structures, supply chain inefficiencies, or operational bottlenecks are common drivers in many cases. Take profitability, for example. A common abstraction breaks revenue down into price and quantity. Simple, right? Now, apply this to your problem. If you're analyzing an airline, for instance, think tickets sold times price. We will be looking at these drivers again in the building block section towards the end of this video. Now, let's dive back into the case. The equation you are solving is simple: investment divided by net yearly cost savings. For this investment to make sense, that number should be less than 2. This is a fair assumption that you can make and check with your interviewer. When structuring your approach, start by focusing on costs. You could begin with revenue, but you should quickly realize that only costs are relevant to this case. Break down key areas like labor, equipment, insurance, storage, and automation. For labor, separate it into direct, indirect, and overheads. Direct can in turn be broken down into low skilled and high skilled categories. With equipment, consider the business model, things like lifting, handling, storage, and shipping. So, how do you identify these drivers systematically? Unfortunately, there is no set blueprint. Is the challenging part of the process. Learning our building blocks, understanding the business context, and reading business news helps you to get familiar with these business dynamics. We are now done building our structure. Now, let's move on to the leading the analysis part. This is where you isolate key issues and find a solution. First, navigate through your structure to isolate root causes and further segment any end nodes if needed. The key is to prioritize the most important items and check with your interviewer to ensure the direction you are taking makes sense. For example, let's say we are tackling a profitability problem for an airline. Using the structure, you might ask the interviewer if there has been a drop in business class sales. If the answer is no, you move on to the next branch. You could then ask if there have been any changes to flights or routes. If not, you would investigate occupancy and discover it's lower. This process helps you identify the root cause systematically. The second step involves generating solutions. To come up with solutions, focus on 3 key points. Structure: you need to generate ideas in a logical, structured way. Tailoring: you need to ensure your solutions specifically address the problem at hand. And finally, actionability. Ideas can come from competitor benchmarking, translating strategies from other industries, or simply business sense. Our course elaborates on all of these. You can use approaches like mathematical breakdowns, 2x2 matrices, or custom structures to organize your ideas. For our case, you can start by looking at the structure and highlight labor as the major cost driver. Next, you can ask the interviewer if they have any further data on costs. This will prompt them to share relevant exhibits. At this point, it's also important to inquire about the cost of the investment. You need this information to calculate the payback period, which will be crucial to your analysis. You'll be presented with the following exhibits, showing the major cost centers and the relative projected reduction percentage. You will also be presented with the cost of investment. Now that you have all the data, don't rush into the calculations. First, revisit your equation and review each element. Make sure you have all the necessary information. Then create a plan. Start by calculating cost savings, then plug everything into the formula to find the payback period. Skipping this step could lead to mistakes, such as confusing maintenance costs with initial costs. Our course has a full section on consulting math and related efficiency tools. Now, let's start going through cost savings. This is quite straightforward, as you are multiplying the cost by percentage saving. You should be able to crunch these numbers quickly. Again, we have a dedicated lecture on fast math in our course. If we start with labor, we can go through these calculations. Equipment follows a similar pattern. Depreciation of equipment is possibly the trickiest. Current depreciation is 50k a year, but we are not given a reduction in depreciation. Since we know that depreciation affects equipment, we can average out the equipment saving costs, assuming they are equally spread across, the average being 15%, so between 10, 15, and 20%. Depreciation savings will therefore be 50k times 15%, which is 7.5k a year. Finally, insurance premium will be 10% of 80,000, so 8,000. We can now find total savings, and we can now look at the investment. All of these costs are one-off, so we can add them. We can now calculate the payback period. We can add our maintenance costs in the equation to finally find that the payback period is less than a year. We sped through this, but we have everything you need explained in our course. Now let's move on to providing recommendations. When asked to make a recommendation, you need to follow the steps. First, you need to provide a key takeaway. Begin with a clear, direct answer to the main case question in one sentence. This is what the client values most, so keep it concise and straight to the point. Second, supporting arguments. Provide 3 key arguments that justify your recommendations. They don't need necessarily to be 3, could be 2, could be 4, but 3 is ideal. These need to be independent, fact-based, and messy. Finally, insights. For each argument, include 1 or 2 insights or data points to substantiate your case. These could be calculations, trends, or logical reasoning that strengthen your recommendation. Lastly, it's helpful to include risks or potential challenges along with how they can be mitigated. This shows you are thinking ahead and considering possible obstacles. In our case, the key takeaway is clear. The recommendation is to go ahead with the investment, as the payback period is less than a year. For supporting arguments, we have high savings, low maintenance cost, and low implementation cost. The initial cost of implementing the software is relatively low, making this investment financially attractive. While there are some implementation risks, we have built in a buffer, ensuring that even with minor setbacks, the investment remains solid. Now, this concludes our case. Let's look at our building blocks. They are fundamental tools to help you structure problems and identify key drivers in a case. They are estimates, profitability, pricing, valuation, and competitive interaction. Let's start with estimation, which is useful in market sizing exercises. Any estimation can be broken down into 7 steps. In step 1, you need to identify the group. Step 2, choose demand or supply side. In step 3, you need to segment in a messy way. In step 4, you need to build a structure. Step 5, you make reasonable assumptions, usually as you go. Step 6, do the math. And finally, in step 7, you will need to test your results with common sense. This is just a summary, and we go more in depth in our course. Profitability is clearly a vast topic. we will quickly go through the main items. Our course, again, features a very detailed overview. Revenue is simply volume times price. Different businesses have various revenue streams, like Nike selling products or a bank making loans. Always ask about a company specific revenue structure in your interviews. Costs are split into fixed and variable. Fixed costs stay the same regardless of production, like rent, while variable costs rise with production, like materials. Some costs, like part time labor, are quasi fixed and may vary with demand. Profit is what's left after subtracting costs from revenue. In cases, you'll focus on either boosting revenue or cutting costs. Profit margin measures the percentage of profit from revenue. The higher the profit margin, the more scalable the business is. The break-even point is where revenues equal costs, meaning no profit or loss. You might be asked to calculate the minimum price or quantity needed to break even. Market size is the total customer base, while market share is the portion your company controls. The market share is the company's revenue divided by the total market. Understanding both is key to measuring a company's performance. Let's now look at pricing. Pricing depends on several factors. Costs. Prices must cover costs to ensure profitability, sometimes covering only variable costs when needed. Companies can adopt cost advantage, offering lower prices, or benefit advantage, charging higher prices for superior products. Perceived value. Customers' perceived value influences pricing, as different people will pay different amounts for the same product. Competitive environment. Prices are often influenced by competitors, especially if products are similar. Availability. Scarcity drives prices up, as seen with diamonds versus graphite or charcoal. Market trends, product life cycle can affect pricing over time, and finally seasonality. Factors like seasonality and product life cycle again can affect pricing over time. There are three main approaches for pricing strategies. Cost-based, pricing is based on costs plus a markup, and value-based, pricing is based on what customers are willing to pay, and competitive, price is based on market competition. Valuations estimate how much a company is worth and are essential for mergers and acquisition cases. They are always estimates due to uncertainty about future outcomes. In this case, we determine whether a client should acquire a competitor by calculating its value using total enterprise value, the TEV, which combines the company's standalone value and any synergies. Standalone value can be calculated using methods like net present value, multiples, or asset-based valuation. Synergies can come from cost reductions, economies of scale, or increased revenues, cross-selling. The idea is that the combined value of two companies should be higher than the standalone valuations thanks to synergies. For more in-depth lessons, visit our course. Markets can change fast, and companies must adapt or risk going bust. Think Nokia. Consultants are often called in to help businesses respond to these changes, so you will likely face this in a case interview. Common market changes include increased competition, M&A activity, or a change in suppliers' power. There are different ways to react, such as hold and wait, responding through M&A, or a change in the business model. How do you prepare for a case interview? Before going into actual strategies, it's crucial to understand exactly what you are being assessed on. Interviewers are evaluating you on 5 key areas which make up the real scorecards consulting firms use. These are probing minds. This is all about understanding how an unfamiliar business works. Structure, how you break the problem down into clear, logical steps that show how you approach the solution. Problem solving, how you prioritize the most relevant information. Numerical agility, how you quickly perform calculations, analyze data, and apply that information to solve the problem efficiently. And finally, communication, which is how you present your solution clearly and concisely. While all case interviews can be approached with the same core strategies, Understanding the different types of case interviews can help you better prepare and adjust your approach. You will see first versus second round interviews. While both rounds follow a similar format, second round interviews are typically more intense in terms of time pressure, focus, and psychological pressure. Second round interviews may employ a bad cop strategy to see how you react under stress and uncertainty. Case interviews can either be interviewer led or candidate led. In interviewer led cases, which McKinsey is known for, the interviewer controls the pace and direction by asking you a set of predetermined questions. As the name suggests, candidates will drive candidate led cases, with the interviewer only intervening if prompted. To complete the picture, we look at different case objectives. Broadly, cases fall into two categories: issue based cases. These ask you to solve specific problems like declining profits or low productivity, and strategic decision cases, where you're asked to determine whether the client should take a particular action, such as entering a new market or acquiring another company. In the consulting interview process, you will also encounter fit interviews, where you will be assessed on your personality, leadership, and teamwork. And for more technical roles, you might face technical interviews, which may involve problem solving within your domain, such as data analysis, coding, or operations. Preparation can be broken down into three key phases: foundations, building, and perfecting. The approach for each phase will vary depending on your background, inclination, and how much time you have left to prepare. You have several tools at your disposal: studying theory through casebooks or courses like ours, watching others solve cases, solving cases solo, practicing with a peer, and working with a coach. The goal of the foundation phase is to build a solid understanding of case interviews, enough to allow you to practice effectively. However, this doesn't mean you need to learn everything before moving on to the next phase. You just need to learn enough to understand what you're doing and avoid confusion during practice. In this phase, your key tools are courses and watching solved cases. If you have a business background or limited time, you can keep it simple. Watch a video like this one, go through a few solved examples, and then move on. If you lack a business background or have more time, invest a bit more into courses to get a deeper understanding. Any other case should be an average of these two. This phase should take anywhere between 2 and 10 hours, depending on your prior knowledge and the time you have available. In the second phase, building, the focus is all about practice. Here, you'll practice solving cases with a peer or coach. After each session, it's essential to gather feedback across the 5 key assessment areas that consulting firms focus on. Once you have collected your feedback, evaluate whether it's strong enough. If it is, you are ready to move on to the next phase. If not, identify your weak spots and engage in targeted practice, then repeat the process. While practicing with peers is helpful, working with a coach can provide you with more insightful, high quality feedback, accelerating your progress. In the final phase, perfecting, the goal is to simulate the actual interview as closely as possible. Whether you're working with a peer or a coach, aim to replicate the interview environment, down to the format, timing, and topics. Feedback is crucial at this stage, but it should be pass or fail. Either you are interview ready or you need to refine further. To enhance the experience, dress and act as if you are in the real interview to help you get fully accustomed to the situation. Finally, your interview day tips. First up, first impressions matter. From the moment you greet your interviewer, you're being assessed. So start strong with a confident handshake and a genuine smile. Remember, how you present yourself, your posture, behavior, and attire reflects how you represent the firm to clients. Now on to the case interview. When you get your case prompt, don't rush. Listen, ask clarifying questions, and confirm you understand the problem. Structure your approach before diving in. Communication is key. Explain your reasoning as you go. Your recommendation should be concise and clear, as if you are speaking to a busy CEO. Finally, prep a few questions to ask your interviewer. If your interview is remote, make sure your tech is solid. You need a stable internet connection, fully charged laptop, And even if you're on Zoom, dress professionally and set up your lighting properly so you get your best. This is all, and thanks for watching. If you found these tips helpful, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future content. For even more in-depth resources and personalized coaching, head over to myconsultingcoach.com. There you'll find everything you need to ace your interviews, from case studies to expert feedback.